It's starting to take shape as some kind of act of a public atrocity, a public act of violence, either involving a knife weapon or a firearm. One firearm, we understand, has been seized in the arrest. What I do know is that this is not over yet. This is an ongoing investigation. There will be more arrests, the police tell me. They are connected, these guys. These are, at the moment, all men. And some of them have had their passports cancelled, and that implies that they are a part of this group that's been under serious surveillance and police watch by ASIO and the federal police since this whole escapade began by Islamic State in the Middle East. So it would suggest that some of them are people who have been denied the access to go there and join the fight. This is a widespread of locations across Sydney, not normally areas where you would expect these guys to be living in past, in terms of what we've seen in the past. But what I'm being told by the police is there is more to come, and in the court today, later on today, there'll be more details released about what the allegation is specifically involving, where in public, what the act was and who was involved.
And Mark Simkin in Canberra, have we heard anything from ASIO on this morning? Because obviously we've heard from Federal Police and New South Wales Police, and the Queensland Police Commissioner had a little bit to say. Has ASIO stepped up at all?
Not this morning, Joe, but it is interesting. Late last week, when the ASIO raised Australia's threat level, the terror threat level, we did speak to ASIO, well, not ASIO, senior intelligence figures, I suppose you could say, at the time, and they were expressing concern about not so much a mass casualty event in Australia, but a lone wolf type attack. And they specifically kept mentioning the Lee Rigby case in Britain, and that was a case last year where a soldier was run over by two men and then hacked to death in the street, and the two men hung around and were quite happy for people to film this on their mobile phones. And it was a real reminder and revelation, I suppose, to intelligence agencies that you can strike terror, create terror by these sort of acts of so-called random violence rather than a mass casualty attack where you blow things up. And obviously the concern from intelligence forces is these things are much harder to control, to stop, to regulate in any way in terms of intelligence. And then it does seem chillingly similar what the police are saying publicly now about what the plans might have been in this case.
And Peter, in that media conference, the Federal Police were saying this is definitely a follow-up to those raids in Brisbane last week.
Not really. What they were saying was that they moved today because they believed this attack was in some way imminent. How imminent they wouldn't say, they wouldn't put a time frame on it, but they moved for a very specific reason. And as Mark is just suggesting, the Lee Rigby case in Britain does come to mind from certainly some of the remarks the police have made to me today, on and off the record. There's a suggestion that this sort of private terror spectacular, this sort of attack on one person in the community, random acts against the public, is the words used by the police commissioner. That certainly suggests something like a Lee Rigby style attack. And as we were saying, there is the possibility of a knife weapon, but certainly a firearm being seized already. But they're talking about this group being connected, and they are talking about them in the context of having had some of them having had their passports cancelled by the Attorney General and the Foreign Affairs Minister. So again, it suggests a connection to the Islamic State movement in the Middle East.
And Mark Simkin, it was notable in that media conference, the New South Wales Police Commissioner Andrew Scipione appealing for calm and saying that there will be forces out on the streets and working over the coming weeks to take care of anyone who wants to cause any trouble. Immigration Minister Scott Morrison was talked about relations with the Muslim community this morning and saying that the government has been working hard on that front.
Yes, the police launching a so-called Operation Hammerhead, but it doesn't sound as it shouldn't be as brutal as that, I suppose. What they're talking about is trying to calm things down and trying to bring people together in a sense. The real fear, of course, is that this could create and exacerbate tensions. We've heard the Prime Minister and other ministers saying repeatedly in recent days that everything that's going on in terms of sending Australian troops to Iraq and the Middle East has got nothing to do with any particular community, has nothing to do with any particular religion. And so I imagine they'll be using very similar words and very similar sentiments in this case.
But coincidentally, Tony Abbott is actually interrupting that trip to Arnhem Land today to head to Amberley Air Force Base in the southeast of Queensland to farewell some troops.
Yes, that's right. As part of the contingent Australia is sending to the Middle East for possible, in fact you would have to say likely deployment in Iraq, there will be 8 Super Hornets, 2 other aircraft. The Super Hornets are due to leave Amberley Air Force Base outside Brisbane this afternoon. This evening the Prime Minister, the opposition leader, will be travelling there to actually farewell the Air Force officers involved, and so it really will be a significant step in Australia's what does look increasingly like a step towards, a march towards conflict back in the Middle East.